Welcome to Eternal Dread, where fear never sleeps. Tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is, because terror has no limits. If you're brave enough, share and comment, but beware, something might be watching you too. Now, turn off the lights, and let the dread begin. Dexter, we're monogamous. No, we're not. The hell do you mean we're not? Since when are we not? Dexter moved away from the table and grabbed a new beer from the fridge. Mia, are you messing with me right now? Me? Messing with you? You're the one who's texting in front of my face. This whole thing blew up when I saw him message someone with a heart emoji, and it definitely wasn't his mom. Dexter's defense was that he was just texting his secondary, some girl named Sunny that I was supposed to know about. Mia, why are you being like this? Like what? We've had this arrangement for over 2 years. What arrangement? It was crazy talk. I couldn't believe he had the balls to pretend this was normal. I don't remember ever discussing a secondary person, or whatever this is. He drank his beer, staring with his characteristic half-closed eyes, as if I had done something to bore or annoy him. Do you want me to get the contract? What contract? The contract that we wrote together, that you signed. I was more confused than ever. Sure. Yes. Bring out the contract. Wordlessly, he went into his room. I could hear him pull out drawers and shuffle through papers. I swirled my finger over top of my wine glass, wondering if this was some stupid prank his friends egged him into doing. Any minute now he was going to come out with a bouquet and sheepishly yell, "April Fools." And then I was going to ream him out because this whole gag had been unfunny and demeaning and stupid. But instead he came out with a sheet of paper. It looked like a contract. Our polyamory relationship. Parties involved. Dexter, boyfriend. Mia, primary girlfriend. Sunny, secondary girlfriend. Date. Redacted. Respect the hierarchy. Dexter and Mia are primary partners, meaning their relationship takes priority in major life decisions, living arrangements, rent, etc. Dexter and Sunny share a secondary relationship. They reserve the right to see each other as long as it does not conflict with the primary relationship. All parties recognize that this is an open, ethical, non-monogamous relationship with mutual respect. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw my signature at the bottom. My curlicule looked pretty much spot on, but I didn't remember signing this at all. Dexter. I struggled to find the right word. His face looked unamused, as if he was getting tired of my kidding around. Dexter, I'm sorry, I don't remember signing this. He rolled his eyes. Mia, come on. I'm being serious. This isn't. I couldn't have signed this. Couldn't have. His sigh turned frustrated. Listen, if this is your way of renegotiating, that's fine. We can have a meeting. I'm always open to discussion. But there's no reason to diss Sunny like that. I was shocked at how defensive he was. Dexter, I'm not trying to diss anyone. I'm not lying. I swear on my mom's grave. My own grave. I do not remember Sunny at all. He looked at me with a frown and shook his head, more disappointed than anything. Listen, we can have a meeting tomorrow. Just stop pretending you don't know her. I didn't want to prod the bear, so I laid off him the rest of the evening. We finished our drinks, watched some TV, then we went to sleep. The following morning Dexter dropped our weekend plans and made a reservation at a local sushi restaurant. Sunny was going to meet us there at noon for a renegotiation. I didn't know what to think. Over breakfast I made a few delicate inquiries over Sunny, but Dexter was still quite offended. Apparently this had been something all three of us had wanted. All three of us? I found it hard to believe, but did not push it any further. Instead I scrounged through the photos on my phone, where I immediately noticed something was wrong. There was a new woman in all of them. It was hard to explain. It's like someone had individually doctored all my old photos to suddenly fit an extra person into each one. It was unsettling to say the least. Dexter and I had this one iconic photo from our visit to the epic suspension bridge, where we were holding a small kiss at the end of the bridge. We occupied most of the frame. Except now when I looked at the photo, somehow there was this shadowy, taller woman behind both of us. She had her hands across both of our waists and was blowing a kiss towards the camera. Who the hell? She was in nearly every photo. Evenings out at restaurants, family gatherings, board game nights, weddings, even in photos from our vacations, Milan, Rome. She even fucking joined us inside the Sistine Chapel. The strangest part was her look. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This was some kind of photoshopped model, like a Kylie Jenner / Kardashian type. It felt like some influencer turned actress turned philanthropist just so happened to bump into two bland Canadians. It didn't look real. The photos were too perfect. There wasn't a single one where she had half her eyes closed or was caught mid-laugh or anything. It's like she had rehearsed a pose for each one. The whole vibe was disturbing. I wanted to confront Dexter the moment I saw this woman, this succubus, this whatever she was. But he went for a bike ride to clear his head. It was very typical of him to avoid confrontation. Originally, he was supposed to come back, and then we'd both head to the restaurant together. But he didn't come back. Dexter texted me instead to come meet him at the restaurant. That he'll be there waiting. What the fuck was going on? The restaurant was a Japanese omakase bar, small venue, no windows. This was one of our favorite places because it wasn't too overpriced but still had a classy vibe. I felt a little betrayed that we were using my favorite date night restaurant for something so auxiliary. My sense of betrayal ripened further when I arrived 10 minutes early only to see Dexter already at the table. And he was sitting next to her. If you could call it sitting, it almost looked like he was kneeling, holding both of her hands, as if he had been sharing the deepest, most important secrets of his life for the last couple hours. I could hear the faint echo of his whisper as I walked in. So glad this could work out this way. For a moment I wanted to turn away. How long have they been here? Is this an ambush? But then Sunny spotted me from across the restaurant. Mia, over here. Her wide eyes glimmered in the restaurant's soft lighting, zeroing in on me like a hawk. Somehow her words traveled 30 feet without her having to raise her voice. Mia, join us. I walked up feeling a little sheepish, but refusing to let it show. I wore what my friends often called my resting defiant face, which can apparently look quite intimidating. Come sit. Sunny patted the open space to her left. Her nails had to be at least an inch long. I smiled and sat on Dexter's right. Sunny cut right to it. So, Dexter says you've been having trouble in your relationship. It was hard to look her in the eyes. Staring at her seemed strangely entrancing. The word tunnel vision immediately came to mind, as if the world around Sunny was merely an echo to her reverberating bell. Trouble? No. Dex and I are doing great. I turned to face Dexter, who looked indifferent as usual. I wouldn't say there's any trouble. I meant in your relationship to our agreement. Sunny's smoky voice lingered one each word. Dexter says you're trying to back out of it? I poured myself a cup of the green tea to busy myself. Anything to avert her gaze. However, as soon as I brought the ceramic cup to my lips, I reconsidered. Am I even sure this drink is safe? I cleared my throat and did my best to find a safe viewing angle of Sunny. As long as I looked away between sentences, it seemed like the entrancing tunnel vision couldn't take hold. Listen, I'm just going to be honest. It's very nice to meet you, Sunny. You look like a very nice person. But I don't know you. Like at all. Don't know me. When I glanced over, Sunny was suddenly backlit. Like one of the restaurant lamps had lowered itself to make her hair look glowing. Of course you know me. We've known each other since high school. As soon as she said the words, I got a migraine. Worse yet, I suddenly remembered things. I suddenly remembered the time we were at our grade 11 theater camp, where I had been paired up with Sunny for almost every assignment. We had laughed at each other in improv and belted from our belts in singing. Our final mini-project was a duologue, and we were assigned Romeo and Juliet. I can still feel the warmness of her hand during the rehearsal, the small of her back, her young, gorgeous smile which has only grown kinder with age. It was there, during our improvised dance scene between Romeo and Juliet, where I had my first urge to kiss her. And even after high school, Sunny continued, looking at me with her perfectly tweezed brows. Are you saying you forgot our whole trip through Europe? Bright purple lights. Music festival. Belgium. I was doing a lot more than just kissing Sunny. Some of these dance floors apparently let just about anything happen. My mind was assaulted with salacious imagery. Breasts. Thighs. A throbbing one in my entire body. I had seen all of Sunny, and she had seen all of me. We've been romantically entwined for ages. We might have been on and off for a couple years, but she was always there for me. She would always be there for me. I smacked my plate, trying to mentally fend off the onslaught of so much imagery. It's not real. It feels real, but it's not real. It can't be real. Well, Dexter asked. He was offering me some of his dynamite roll. When did we order food? I politely declined and cleared my throat. There was still enough of me that knew Sunny was manifesting something. Somehow she was warping past events in my head. I forcibly stared at the empty plate beneath me. I don't know what's going on, but both Dexter and I are leaving. Dexter scoffed. Leaving? I don't think so. No one's leaving until you tell us what's wrong. Sunny's smoky voice sounded more alluring the longer I wasn't looking. That's how our meetings are supposed to work. Remember? I could tell she was trying to draw my gaze, but I wasn't having it. I slid off my seat in one quick movement. Dexter grabbed my wrist. Hey! I wrenched my hand. Let go. We struggled for a few seconds before Sunny stood up and assertively pronounced, Darlings, please, there is no need for this to be embarrassing. Dexter let go. I took this as an opening and backed away from the booth. And what a booth it was. The lighting was picture perfect. Sunny had the most artistically pleasing arrangement of sushi rolls I'd ever seen. Seaweed, rice and sashimi arranged in flourishes that would have made Wes Anderson melt in his seat. I turned and bolted. Mia! Dexter yelled. At the door, I pulled the handle and ran outside. Only I didn't enter the outside lobby. I entered the same sushi restaurant again. The hell? I turned around and looked behind me. There was Sunny sitting in her booth. And then I looked ahead, back in front. Sunny, sitting in her booth. A mirror copy? The door opened both ways into the same restaurant. What the? I tried to look for any other exit. I ran along the left side of the wall, away from Sunny's booth, towards the washroom. There had to be a back exit somewhere. I found the washrooms, the kitchen, and the staff rooms, but none of the doors would open. It's like they were all glued shut. What's going on? What is this? Wiping my tears, I wandered back into the restaurant, realizing in shock that we were the only patrons here. We were the only people here. Everything was totally empty except for Sunny's beautifully lit booth. She watched me patiently with a smile. What is happening? There was no use hiding the fear in my voice. What is happening is that we need to renegotiate. Sunny cleared some food from the center of the table and presented a paper contract. Relationship with Sunny. Parties involved. Primary girlfriend, Sunny. Primary boyfriend, Dexter. Secondaries, Mia, Maxine, Jasper, Theo, Victor, No, Mateo, Claudine. Tertiaries, see Appendix B. Date, redacted. The changeover. Mia will be given 30 days to find new accommodations. Dexter recommends returning to her parents' place in the meantime. Mia is allowed to keep any and all of her original possessions. My jaw dropped. What the fuck? Avoiding Sunny's gaze, I instead turned to Dexter, who stared at me with a loosely apologetic frown. Dexter, what is all this? It is saying I have to move. We just moved in together like 6 months ago. You can't be serious. He cleared his throat and flattened his shirt across his newly formed pecs and six-pack. What is going on? I am serious, Mia. I've done some thinking. You don't have what I want. There was some kind of aura exuding from Dexter now. He looked cleaner and better shaven than before. His cheekbones might have even been higher too. I didn't know how much this had to do with Sunny's influence, but I tried to see past it. I spoke to him as the boyfriend I had dated for over 2 years. Dexter, listen to me. I'm telling it to you straight as it is. Something's fucked. Don't follow Sunny. I pointed at her without turning a glance. You're like ensorcelled or something. If you care at all about yourself, your well-being, your future, just leave. This is not worth it. This isn't even about me anymore. Your life is at risk here. Sunny laughed a rich, lugubrious laugh, and then drank some elaborate cocktail in the corner of my eye. Well, I want to stay with her, Dexter said, and you need to sign to make that happen. His finger planted itself on the contract. Dexter, you can't stay. If you don't sign, Sunny's smoky voice traveled right up to both my ears, as if she was whispering into both at the same time. You can never leave. Suddenly, all the lamps in the restaurant went out. All the lamps except our booths. It's like we were featured in some commercial. Sunny stared at me with completely black eyes. No iris. No scara. Pure obsidian. Sign it. All around me was pitch darkness. Was I even in a restaurant anymore? A cold, stifling tightness caused my back to shiver. I signed on the dotted line. My curlicule never looked better. Good. Sunny snatched the page away, vanishing it somewhere behind her back. She smiled and sipped from her drink. You know, Mia, I don't think Dexter has ever loved you to begin with. Let's be honest. Her all-black eyes found mine again. I was flooded with more memories. Dexter forgetting our anniversary. His inappropriate joke by my dad's hospital bed. The time he compared my cooking to a toddler's in front of my entire family. My headache started to throb. In response, I unzipped my purse and pulled out my pepper spray. I maced the fuck out of Sunny. The yellow spray shot her right in the face. She screamed and turned away. Dexter grabbed my arm. I grabbed his in return. Now Dexter, let's get out of here. Forget Sonny. Fuck this contract. But he wrestled my hand and pried the pepper spray from my fingers. His chiseled jawline abruptly disappeared. He looked upset. His face was flush with shock and disappointment. I can't believe you, Mia. Pepper spray? Are you serious? Suddenly the lights were back, and we weren't alone in the restaurant. The patrons around me looked stupefied by my behavior. People around began to cough and waft the spray away from their table. I stepped back from our booth, which looked the same as the other booths. Sunny was keeled over in her seat, gagging and trying to clear her throat. A waiter shuffled over to our table, asking what had happened. A child across from us began to cry. I tore away and sprinted out the doors. This time I had no trouble entering the lobby. This time I had no trouble escaping back outside. I moved away from Dexter the next day. Told my family it was an emergency. They asked if he was being abusive, if I should involve the police in the situation. I said no, because it wasn't quite exactly like that. I didn't know exactly what was going on, except that I needed to get away. I just wanted to go. After that evening, 30 months of relationship had just gone up in smoke. All my memories of Dexter were now terrible. I figured some of them had to be true. He was far from the perfect boyfriend. But for all of them to be rotten, that couldn't be right. Why would I have been with someone for so long if they were so awful? In the effort of maintaining my self-respect, I convinced myself that Dexter was a good guy, that his image had been slandered by Sonny, which is still the only explanation I have, that she had altered my memories of him. I'm sorry I couldn't help you, Dexter, but the situation was beyond me. I hope you're able to find your own way out of it too. There's nothing else I can do. Although I've distanced myself away from Dexter and moved back in with my parents in a completely different part of the city, I still haven't been able to shake Sonny. She still texts me. She keeps asking to meet up. Apparently we're due for a catch-up. I see her randomly in coffee shops and food courts, but I always pack up and leave. I don't know who or what she is, but every time I see her, I get flooded with more bogus romantic events of our shared past. Our trip to Nicaragua, our skiing staycation, our St. Patrick's Day at the beach. It's reached a point where I can tell the memories are fake by the sheer volume. There's no way I would have had the time, not to mention the money, to go to half these places I'm suddenly remembering. So I'm saving up to move away. Thanks to my family lineage, I have an Italian passport. I'm going to try and restart my life somewhere around Florence, but who knows, I might even move to Spain or France. I know it's a big sudden change, but after these last couple months, I really need a way to reclaim myself. I just want my own life, and my own inside my head back, that I want to start making memories that I know are real. Places I've been to, people I've seen. I want memories that belong to no one else but me. Nationwide mandatory return to office. The email subject line hit me like a punch to the gut. Of course, there was no return involved, for me at least. I'd been hired pre-pandemic to a fully remote position. I recalled the countless hours I'd spent scouring for such a role, and how ecstatic I'd been when I'd been selected for it. The job entailed hard work, but I'd excelled at it, and my husband and I had built our family around the flexibility it offered. Now, my employer had the gall to suggest that its rescission of the promise it had made to me would improve productivity, foster increased collaboration, and instill a sense of family amongst our staff. Nope, and yuck, I thought. The email continued by declaring that true success and experience required a regular presence in the office. It all read like our CEO, in typical form, projecting his own uselessness and impotence onto his employees. I sighed. Why couldn't I, or for that matter, anyone else on my team, be dumb, lazy, and short-sighted enough to climb the corporate ladder as high as he had? My husband and I scrambled to make the necessary life changes as my applications to other jobs went nowhere. Realizing we could no longer give our dog the amount of exercise and attention she needed, we rehomed her to live with my mother-in-law. We staggered our work schedules to permit one of us to drop off our twins at daycare and the other to pick them up at the end of the day. My husband, who always fought to maintain a positive attitude, reminded me that we were still living a good life in the grand scheme of things, even if we were set to have less time together as a family. I know, I replied. It's just that we all know that these changes aren't happening for good reasons. We're moving backwards just because the dipshits who run these companies think they're a lot smarter than they really are. I shrugged, feeling defeated and exasperated. But that's just the way it's always been, and always going to be, isn't it? Finding a parking space, driving was the only option, due to the lack of public transit, proved nightmarish. For over 20 minutes, I meandered through all 9 floors of the garage searching for an open spot. Finally, I wedged my car into the only gap I could find, which lay between a support column and a truck left sloppily over the line by its driver, and escaped my vehicle by crawling out of the back seat. As I hurried down a staircase and towards the main building, I wondered how anyone who arrived after me would be able to park. I was there relatively early, after all, and I hadn't seen any other available spaces. Passing underneath the giant Abernathy Industries emblem, I entered the main lobby, where a young woman in azure jacket and skirt suit waved to me. "You must be Cora," she said, before introducing herself as Monica. "I'm with HR, and I'll be showing you the way to your office." "Nice to meet you, Monica," I said. "I believe we've talked by email a few times." "Indeed we have." As we shook hands, a bright, beaming smile stretched across her face. "This is such an exciting day for me," she gushed, a tear in her eye. "For all of us, really. You've been a part of this company for years, but now it feels different, like you're finally a part of our family." This took me aback. Naturally, I did not see, and had no desire to ever see, the people I put up with to pay my mortgage as brothers or sisters. Or second cousins twice removed, for that matter. So, how do I find my office?" I asked, eager to change the subject. "Oh, right," Monica responded, as if snapping out of a trance. "This way." As she led me to the building's main elevator, we passed a set of closed double doors labeled auditorium. "We do big events in there too," Monica explained. "In fact, we'll be doing a welcome celebration for you and all the other former remote workers in there this afternoon. Everyone will be in attendance. We're all so excited for it." Dear God, I thought, reflexively recoiling at the thought of an office social gathering. All I wanted from this company was a fucking paycheck, not a party to honor its latest efforts to torment me. Inside the elevator, Monica pressed the button for 19. This confused me, as my supervisor had emailed me that my team's offices were on the 18th floor. Monica, as if reading my mind, informed me that renovations were occurring in the 18th floor elevator lobby. "So, you'll have to go to the 19th floor, and then work your way down from there. I'll show you." "Oh, okay," I mumbled, annoyed at the extra time it would take to reach my workspace. The doors opened to reveal a gloomy hallway. Half the overhead lights seemed to be broken, and the other half flickered sporadically over a narrow patch of marble floor surrounded by a sea of carpet patterned in sickly shades of brown, gray, and dark green. "Accounting is that way," said Monica, motioning to the right, "and HR, including my office, is straight ahead. But for now, follow me this way through sales." At this, Monica abruptly scurried into the darkness. I called out for her to slow down, but she ignored me. Seeing no other option, I doubled my speed to keep up with her. We passed offices, cubicles, a rundown kitchen, and copy machines. I became disoriented as Monica turned sharply to the left, then to the left again at the next intersection, then right, then left once more. As Monica took me past a corner office, I peeked through the window of its closed door. Inside, I glimpsed a well-dressed figure sitting behind a desk. He was frozen in place, as if deep in thought, and bizarrely, his face seemed to have no features at all. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth skin bereft of any other qualities. That can't be right, I thought to myself, as I continued to hurry after Monica. Surely the window was made of frosted glass, or my eyes were playing tricks on me in the low light. Monica's voice emerged from the distant shadows. "You still there, Cora?" Yeah, on my way," I panted as I jogged towards her. Monica proceeded to lead me down a staircase. The floor below was just as gloomy as the floor above, and reaching my cubicle required traversing a maze of narrow corridors. "And here it is, your very own workspace," announced Monica as I examined the small area, which contained only a dingy chair facing a dusty computer on a plain desk. "If you have any concerns, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll be seeing you at the welcoming party later. Actually, I do have a few questions," I said as I took a seat. "About the lighting, and the route we took to get here, and the lack of space in the parking garage, and..." To my surprise, I looked back to find Monica gone. "Monica?" I called. She didn't respond, and when I got up to search for her, she seemed to have vanished. My computer slowly came to life, only to promptly turn itself off moments later. I groaned as the process repeated itself several times before the computer finally stayed on long enough for the login screen to appear. I hastily entered my credentials. My computer's hard drive proceeded to heat up and emit a series of discordant noises. as if my mere act of logging into it was causing it to struggle under an intense strain. How was I going to get anything done with all these delays? If I were using my work laptop, which I'd been required to mail back several days ago, I'd have accomplished a considerable amount already. Finally, after several minutes, everything appeared to have loaded. I opened 2 spreadsheets and was about to start working when an unfamiliar voice startled me. "Cora, so good to see you." I turned to find myself facing a Hispanic woman with long brown hair. Before I could react, she dashed up to me and wrapped her arms around me. Whoa, stop that!" I screamed as I angrily shoved her off me. She backed up, her expression changing to a mixture of puzzlement and concern. "Is something wrong, Cora? Did I surprise you? Who are you?" I asked. "What? You know who I am." "Don't be silly, no." She let out an irritated sigh. "Look, Cora, I'm not playing whatever game this is. It's me, Ava, your mentor and partner on countless projects. And you know that from the dozens and dozens of video calls we've had together. So why are you pretending not to?" This left me dumbfounded and bewildered. The person she was describing, the Ava I'd worked with for years, simply wasn't the woman standing at the entrance of my cubicle. That Ava, the correct one, was black for starters, had a totally different voice, and was not the kind of person to surprise me with an unsolicited hug. When I didn't respond, I didn't know how to. After all, fake Ava chimed in. "It's probably just the lights. They sure keep it dim around here, don't they? But you'll get used to it. When management first removed most of the lights, it upset me. But I adjusted, and it stopped bothering me after a while." She continued, oblivious to the total disinterest I attempted to project. "Less electricity saves money and supports the bottom line, after all, and that's what matters most. Anyway, did you hear the latest about Michael? His wife discovered the pictures, the ones with that flight attendant I told you about, and she's furious." Michael, meanwhile, keeps. As she spoke, my mind tried to wrap itself around what was happening. Who is this person, and why was she impersonating Ava? And why was everything at the office so goddamn weird? "Anyway," continued fake Ava after several minutes of monologuing, "are you alright, Cora? You look tired." "Yeah, I'm just feeling a little run down," I answered truthfully. James and Ella had woken up twice last night. I'd barely gotten any sleep. "The twins keeping you up again?" she asked. This bothered me. It felt like an invasion of my privacy. How the hell did this lady know about my family situation? I'd vented about family issues to Ava, the real Ava, many times, but this lady had no way of knowing any of that. "Look, why don't we talk later?" I asked, eager to get rid of her. "I need to get back to work." "Sure thing. I'll see you soon. Let's grab lunch sometime soon." At that, fake Ava finally left me in peace. I turned back to my computer. I thought about typing up a resignation letter and marching right out, assuming I could even find the building exit at this point. Everything that had happened thus far today left me deeply uncomfortable. I didn't want to work here anymore, consequences be damned. I opened a blank Word document and began drafting an email to my supervisor explaining all the reasons why I was providing my 2 weeks' notice. The thoughts I laid out were unfiltered and littered with pejoratives directed at company leadership. I knew I would water it down and clean it up prior to sending it, but for now it felt good to write how I honestly felt. Before long, the words before me blurred together as the combination of minimal lighting and barely 2 hours of sleep sent me into a daze. "I'll close my eyes just for a second," I told myself as I leaned back and retreated into memories of happier times. I awoke to the sound of a high-pitched whine. At first, I assumed it to be the nighttime cry of James or Ella signifying the need for a diaper change or feeding. But as I regained my senses, I realized that I was still at work, and that I'd somehow managed to fall into a deep sleep in my cubicle's second-rate chair. Frantically, I checked my phone. It was 3:01 p.m. I'd slept nearly all day. I chided myself for letting this happen. I'd never slept at work before, much less for so long. Though, in fairness to me, nearly all the lights were out, and the room was almost pitch black. Whatever I thought, I'd made up my mind to quit this job anyway. Perhaps it was something of a conciliation prize that I'd managed to fall into the deepest nap since I gave birth to the twins on the same day I would provide my 2 weeks' notice. But why was it so damn dark, and what was the distant sound, which continued to wail through my work area that had woken me? I discerned something strange about my computer, too. When I placed my hands on the keyboard, the buttons felt different than usual. They didn't press down or react at all to my touch. When I shined my only source of light, my cell phone's flashlight function, on my computer, I saw that my computer had been replaced by a paper replica of itself, the kind of thing you'd, if you're old enough, see in a display at an office supplies store. What the fuck? I thought. The weirdness of it alone bothered me plenty, but even worse was the implication that someone had switched out my functioning computer while I dozed right in front of it. That's it, I'm getting out of here. The first thing I noticed as I entered the surrounding labyrinth of offices and cubicles is that they all appeared to be unoccupied. My flashlight revealed a few signs of life, a stray pen, a coffee mug, or a half-finished snack, but no people. Picture frames stood on some desks and hung on some walls, but they displayed only blank voids rather than images of smiling families. I tried to retrace the route Monica had taken me on, but quickly found myself at a dead end. "Hello," I hollered. "I'm a bit lost. Can anybody help me?" There was no response. As I wandered further, turning in different directions as I went, it dawned on me that I'd yet to see a single window to the outside world. Even as my surroundings seemed to stretch on unbelievably far, the lack of any glimpse of the sun or sky made me feel claustrophobic. I encountered 2 staircase doors, but, in what I assumed to be a serious fire hazard, each was locked. The handle to one of them, marked Emergency Exit, was even encumbered by layers of heavy metal chains. The sound that woke me reverberated again. I was close to it, and I could now sense that it possessed a hollow, machine-like timbre. Lacking any better ideas, I headed down towards it. The carpeted floor before me was damp. Some kind of puddle had formed on it, and while I couldn't get a good look at it, the wet substance on it did not appear to be water. Rather, it had a murky, greenish quality to it. Using my flashlight, I traced the liquid to its source, which appeared to be an air vent that steadily dripping a small stream of it onto the ground below. I hopped over puddle, landing near the closed door to the room that appeared to be the source of the sound. When I opened the door, the blinding light inside forced me to shut my eyes. As my vision slowly adjusted, I realized that the sound simply originated from the standard copy machine housed in this room, which appeared to be in the midst of a large printing job. Examining it more closely, I realized that it seemed to be stuck in a peculiar loop. Each page in a large ream of paper entered it on one side, went through the machine, and exited without a single marking on it. Once the output tray reached a particular height, the sheets would slide down a ramp into the input tray, repeating the loud and pointless cycle. I placed a finger on the power button and held it there until the machine turned off. An eerie silence followed, broken only by the soft pats of my feet against the carpet as I re-entered the hallway. I walked, trying every door as I did so. Most were locked. Some led to vacant offices. Others led to empty closets, or break rooms with crumbs and pots half filled with the remnants of last week's coffee. As time passed, the darkness around me, still punctured only by my phone light, seemed to grow more opaque, more encompassing. Occasionally, I'd see what looked to be the same supply cabinet filled with purple highlighters, or the same translucent puddle of gunk, or the same cubicle with a running fan and a chair plopped on its side. Hints that I was somehow traveling in a circle, but I took no discernible turns, and the order in which I came upon each landmark was inconsistent. How do I get out of here? I realized I was becoming thirsty, and I knew my phone battery wouldn't last forever. When I tried calling my husband, to be followed, if he didn't answer, by a call to the front desk, and then 911 if necessary, the call failed, despite my phone displaying that it had service. Distant sounds drew my attention. At first, they resembled high-pitched giggles, but as I approached, they erupted into the buoyant laughter of a crowd. How anyone could feel compelled to express any feeling of joy in this hellhole perplexed me, but I attempted to track down the source all the same. If I just follow the laughter, I'll find someone who can lead me out, I told myself. But deep down, what I wanted most was the simple reassurance that I wasn't stuck here all alone. I ran down hallways. I climbed over cubicle walls. I yanked at stuck doorknobs and stormed from one side of a sticky, dingy kitchen to the exit on the other side. Finally, I found myself in a narrow corridor. At the opposite end, an overhead light blared over an open rectangular space. At least a dozen figures stood in it, but my eyes, having long ago adjusted to the dark, couldn't make out any distinguishing features on them. They just stood there, facing me. Then, all at once, they were gone. Their laughter faded, too, leaving behind only the same sterile silence that had haunted me for so long. Had they run away or gone somewhere else? I chased after them, calling out for help. I found myself in exactly the place I was looking for, an elevator lobby. Contrary to Monica's warning, I see no evidence of renovations. The people assembled here must have just gone downstairs. I didn't ask myself what they were doing standing here and bellowing for so long. I didn't need to know that. I just needed to get the hell out, something I finally had a way to do. Nervously, I held out my hand and prayed that the down button. I held my breath as the floor display slowly reached my level. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. The doors then opened to reveal a clean, well-lit elevator cab. I rushed inside, hit the lobby button, and watched with relief as the doors closed and the elevator began its descent. I tapped my sweaty fingers impatiently against the wall as the floors steadily ticked down. Finally, Elle appeared, and the doors opened to the main lobby. Only one thing stood between me and the exit. A pale woman with curly red hair, the first person I'd seen in ages, whose face lit up upon seeing me exit the elevator. "Girl, what took you so long?" she hollered in a nauseatingly excited voice. "You almost missed it, come on." I sped past her, my gaze focused on the way out. She moved rapidly, her firm hand grabbing me around the wrist before I could react. I attempted to fling her off, but with surprising force, she easily held me in place. "Cora, the party's that way," she said, gesturing towards the auditorium with the hand that wasn't restraining me. "I know how much you want to get home and see the twins, but you have to at least make an appearance." "Let me go," I cried. She adopted a deadpan expression. "Cora, we're not doing that. First you pretend not to know me. Next you zone out the whole time I'm filling you in about Michael. And now you try to skip your own welcome back party? You and me were like sisters, Cora. What happened to you?" My jaw dropped. Was this person also pretending to be Ava? I tried to pull away from her again, only for the second fake Ava to whirl around, restrain me, and with remarkable strength, pull me towards the auditorium. I kept trying to fight her, to pull her off of me, but all succeeded in doing was exhausting myself even further. Some of what followed passed in a blur. I recall Ava, or whatever she was, dragging me past row after row of empty seats, across countless small puddles of rancid goo, and onto a stage covered in banners, streams, and balloons, an unnatural warmth drifting down from the air above, and the sense that I was being watched by something hostile and utterly evil. I remember spotting a loose balloon and watching it as it floated ever so slowly, up and above the auditorium stage. With a loud pop, it burst upon making contact with a sight that still horrifies me to this day. An amalgam of body parts stretched across the ceiling. A soup of limbs, torsos, lips, ears, and more than anything, faces. So many faces, all floating in an inverted pool, a hazy green substance occasionally dripping from their pained, open mouths onto the floor below. A plethora of voices, one of which I recognized as Monica's, began speaking. "Welcome home. We're happy to have you here with us. We've been waiting for you for so long. I knew you'd make it." I felt paralyzed. For a moment, I stood there, speechless and stunned, as the faces, male and female, black and white, young and old, oozed into a new form held together by flabby patches of skin and bent tendons. They combined into a gigantic, monstrous face, with an open, hungry mouth lined by hundreds of lips, filled with teeth composed of thousands of teeth. Out of its mouth slithered a long, slimy organ. It unfurled as it dropped, landing before me with a wet plop. It was a tongue, stitched together from the tongues and various other organs that had once belonged to the marketers, janitors, supervisors, accountants, and secretaries of my company. My captor pushed me closer to it. For a moment, I thought about giving up, about letting the sticky ligament wrap around me and pull me upwards into the gaping mouth. I wondered what it would be like to be digested by that thing, to become a part of it, to become one with everyone else. I imagined it swallowing up my anxieties, my student debt, and my bouts of insomnia, and replacing them with bottomless sleep. The mouth above me emanated several words in a deep, slurred voice, but I wasn't paying attention to it. I knew I had to fight, not just for myself, but also for the twins, my husband, and the life I wanted to live. James and Ella are counting on me, I told myself, as I mustered the kind of strength that courses through an animal protecting its young. It caught Fake Ava off guard. At first, she managed to keep her grip on me, but the pain from the way I scratched and dug my nails into her arm eventually wore her down. With all my might, I pried her off of me and, without wasting a moment, took the opportunity to run. I remember screaming, loud, even deafening, screaming, from above, as if every face that made up that creature was shrieking its disapproval. But I didn't look up, nor did I glance back to see if Fake Ava was following me. No, all I did was run. I sprinted across the auditorium, through the main lobby, and out the front door. I kept going for as long as I could, until my feet were blistered and my body could take me no further. I didn't care about my car, which to this day, I assume remains where I eefed it between the support column and the truck. I just cared about putting as much distance as possible between me and my employer. I still have nightmares about what I saw. More than anything, what frightens me is the knowledge that it's still out there, and that it's still hungry. There was a strange email on my computer the next morning. It was from Monica, and it stated that my resignation email had been accepted. This struck me as weird, as I'd never finished writing, much less sent, that email. But I had no reason to pick a fight about it. Monica promised a good severance, after all, and even added that I wouldn't have to do anything more to collect it. No paperwork, no projects to finish up. It would be a clean break. Best wishes to you and your family, she wrote at the end of the message. This made me uncomfortable, though it took me a moment to realize why. Then it dawned on me. It was what the thing, the face on the ceiling, had said to me just as I made my move to escape. The words I have tried so very, very hard to block out of my mind ever since. I don't sleep well anymore. Haven't for decades, really. My wife Elaine has grown used to my midnight wanderings, the way I check the locks 3 times before bed, how I flinch at certain sounds, the click of dress shoes on hardwood, the creak of a door opening slowly. She stopped asking about the nightmares that leave me gasping and sweat-soaked in the dark hours before dawn. She's good that way, knows when to let something lie. But some things shouldn't stay buried. I'm 64 years old now. The doctors say my heart isn't what it used to be. I've survived 1 minor attack already, and the medication they've got me on makes my hands shake like I've got Parkinson's. If I'm going to tell this story, it has to be now, before whatever's left of my memories gets scrambled by age or death, or the bottles of whiskey I still use to keep the worst of the recollections at bay. This is about Blackwood Reform School for Boys, and what happened during my 6 months there in 1974. What really happened, not what the newspapers reported, not what the official records show. I need someone to know the truth before I die. Maybe then I'll be able to sleep. My name is Thaddeus Mitchell. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Connecticut, the kind of place where people kept their lawns mowed and their problems hidden. My father worked for an insurance company, wore the same gray suit every day, came home at 5:30 on the dot. My mother taught piano to neighborhood kids, served on the PDA, and made pot roast on Sundays. They were decent people, trying their best in the aftermath of the cultural upheaval of the 60s to raise a son who wouldn't embarrass them. I failed them spectacularly. It started small, shoplifting candy bars from the corner store, skipping school to hang out behind the bowling alley with older kids who had cigarettes and beer. Then came the spray-painted obscenities on Mr. Abernathy's garage door. He'd reported me for stealing his newspaper, followed by the punch I threw at Principal Danning when he caught me smoking in the bathroom. By 13, I'd acquired what the court called a pattern of escalating delinquent behavior. The judge who sentenced me, Judge Harmon, with his steel-gray hair and eyes like chips of ice, was a believer in the scared straight philosophy. He gave my parents a choice: 6 months at Blackwood Reform School or juvenile detention followed by probation until I was 18. They chose Blackwood. The brochure made it look like a prestigious boarding school, with its stately Victorian architecture and promises of rehabilitation through structure, discipline, and vocational training. My father said it would be good for me, it would make a man of me. If he only knew what kind of men Blackwood made. The day my parents drove me there remains etched in my memory. The long, winding driveway through acres of dense pine forest, the main building looming ahead, all red brick and sharp angles against the autumn sky, the 10-foot fence topped with coils of gleaming razor wire that seemed at odds with the school's dignified facade. My mother cried when we parked, asked if I wanted her to come inside. I was too angry to say yes, even though every instinct screamed not to let her leave. My father shook my hand formally, told me to make the most of this opportunity. I watched their Buick disappear down the driveway, swallowed by the trees. It was the last time I'd see them for 6 months. Sometimes I wonder if I'd ever truly seen them before that, or if they'd ever truly seen me. Headmaster Thorne met me at the entrance, a tall, gaunt man with deep-set eyes and skin so pale it seemed translucent in certain light. His handshake was cold and dry like touching paper. He spoke with an accent I couldn't place, something European but indistinct, as if deliberately blurred around the edges. "Welcome to Blackwood, young man," he said, those dark eyes never quite meeting mine. "We have a long and distinguished history of reforming boys such as yourself." Some of our most successful graduates arrived in much the same state as you, angry, defiant, lacking direction. They left as pillars of their communities. He didn't elaborate on what kind of communities those were. The intake process was clinical and humiliating. Strip search, delousing shower, institutional clothing, gray slacks, white button-up shirts, black shoes that pinched my toes. They took my watch, my wallet, the Swiss Army knife my grandfather had given me, saying I'd get them back when I left. I never saw any of it again. My assigned room was on the 3rd floor of the East Wing, a narrow cell with 2 iron-framed beds, a shared dresser, and a small window that overlooked the exercise yard. My roommate was Marcus Reed, a lanky kid from Boston with quick eyes and a crooked smile that didn't quite reach them. He'd been at Blackwood for 4 months already, sent there for joyriding in his uncle's Cadillac. "You'll get used to it," he told me that first night, voice low even though we were alone. "Just keep your head down, don't ask questions, and never, ever be alone with Dr. Faust." I asked who Dr. Faust was. "The school physician," Marcus said, glancing at the door as if expecting someone to be listening. "He likes to experiment. Says he's collecting data on adolescent development or some bullshit. Just try to stay healthy." The daily routine was mind-numbingly rigid. Wake at 5:30 a.m., make beds to military precision, hygiene and dress inspection at 6 o'clock, breakfast at 6:30. Classes from 7:30 to noon, covering the basics but with an emphasis on moral education and industrial skills. Lunch, followed by 4 hours of work assignments, kitchen duty, groundskeeping, laundry maintenance. Dinner at 6 o'clock, mandatory study hall from 7 to 9 o'clock, lights out at 9:30. There were approximately 40 boys at Blackwood when I arrived, ranging in age from 12 to 17. Some were genuine troublemakers, violence in their eyes, prison tattoos already on their knuckles despite their youth. Others were like me, ordinary kids who'd made increasingly bad choices. A few seemed out of place entirely, too timid and well-behaved for a reform school. I later learned these were the private placements, boys whose wealthy parents had paid Headmaster Thorne directly to take their embarrassing problems off their hands. Homosexuality, drug use, political radicalism, things that good families couldn't abide in the early 70s. The staff consisted of Headmaster Thorne, 6 teachers, all men, all with the same hollow-eyed look, for guards called supervisors, a cook, a groundskeeper, and Dr. Faust. The doctor was a small man with wire-rimmed glasses and meticulously groomed salt and pepper hair. His hands were always clean, nails perfectly trimmed. He spoke with the same unidentifiable accent as Headmaster Thorne. The first indication that something was wrong at Blackwood came 3 weeks after my arrival. Clayton Wheeler, a quiet 15-year-old who kept to himself, was found dead at the bottom of the main staircase, his neck broken. The official explanation was that he'd fallen while trying to sneak downstairs after lights out. But I'd seen Clayton the evening before, hunched over a notebook in the library, writing frantically. When I'd approached him to ask about a history assignment, he'd slammed the notebook shut and hurried away, looking over his shoulder as if expecting pursuit. I mentioned this to one of the supervisors, a younger man named Aldrich who seemed more human than the others. He'd thanked me, promised to look into it. The notebook was never found. Aldrich disappeared 2 weeks later. The official story was that he'd quit suddenly, moved west for a better opportunity. But Emmett Dawson, who worked in the administrative office as part of his work assignment, saw Aldrich's belongings in a box in Headmaster Thorne's office. Family photos, clothes, even his wallet and keys. No one leaves without their wallet. Emmett disappeared 3 days after telling me about the box. Then Marcus went missing. My roommate, who'd been counting down the days until his release, excited about the welcome home party his mother was planning. The night before he vanished, he shook me awake around midnight, his face pale in the moonlight slanting through our window. "Thad," he whispered, "I need to tell you something. Last night I couldn't sleep, so I went to get a drink of water. I saw them taking someone down to the basement. Wheeler wasn't an accident. They're doing something to us, man. I don't know what, but..." The sound of footsteps in the hallway cut him off, the distinctive click-clack of dress shoes on hardwood. Marcus dove back into his bed, pulled the covers up. The footsteps stopped outside our door, lingered, moved on. When I woke the next morning, Marcus was gone. His bed was already stripped, as if he'd never been there. When I asked where he was, I was told he'd been released early for good behavior. But his clothes were still in our dresser. His mother's letters, with their excited plans for his homecoming, were still tucked under his mattress. No one seemed concerned. No police came to investigate. When I tried to talk to other boys about it, they turned away, suddenly busy with something else. The fear in their eyes was answer enough. After Marcus, they moved in Silas Hargrove, a pale, freckled boy with a stutter who barely spoke above a whisper. He'd been caught breaking into summer homes along Lake Champlain, though he didn't seem the type. He told me his father had lost his job, and they'd been living in their car. The break-ins were to find food and warmth, not to steal. I just wanted somewhere to sleep, he said one night. Somewhere warm. Blackwood was warm, but it wasn't safe. Silas disappeared within a week. By then, I'd started noticing other things. The way certain areas of the building were always locked, despite being listed as classrooms or storage on the floor plans. The way some staff members appeared in school photographs dating back decades, unchanged. The sounds at night, furniture being moved in the basement, muffled voices in languages I didn't recognize, screams quickly silenced. The smell that sometimes wafted through the heating vents, metallic and sickly sweet, like blood and decay. I began keeping a journal, hiding it in a loose floorboard beneath my bed. I documented everything, names, dates, inconsistencies in the staff stories. I drew maps of the building, marking areas that were restricted and times when they were left unguarded. I wasn't sure what I was collecting evidence of, only that something was deeply wrong at Blackwood, and someone needed to know. My new roommate after Silas was Wyatt Blackburn, a heavy-set boy with dead eyes who'd been transferred from a juvenile detention center in Pennsylvania. Unlike the others, Wyatt was genuinely disturbing. He collected dead insects, arranging them in patterns on his windowsill. He watched me while I slept. He had long, whispered conversations with himself when he thought I wasn't listening. "They're choosing," he told me once out of nowhere, separating the wheat from the chaff. "Your wheat, Mitchell. Special. They've been watching you." I asked who they were. He just smiled, showing teeth that seemed too small, too numerous. "The old ones. The ones who've always been here." Then he laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Don't worry. It's an honor to be chosen." I became more cautious after that, watching the patterns, looking for a way out. The fence was too high, topped with razor wire. The forest beyond was miles of wilderness. The only phone was in Headmaster Thorne's office, and mail was read before being sent out. But I kept planning, kept watching. The basement became the focus of my attention. Whatever was happening at Blackwood, the basement was central to it. Staff would escort selected boys down there for specialized therapy sessions. Those boys would return quiet, compliant, their eyes vacant. Some didn't return at all. December brought heavy snow, blanketing the grounds and making the old building creak and groan as temperatures plummeted. The heating system struggled, leaving our rooms cold enough to see our breath. Extra blankets were distributed, scratchy wool things that smelled of mothballs and something else, something that made me think of hospital disinfectant. It was during this cold snap that I made my discovery. My work assignment that month was maintenance, which meant I spent hours with Mr. Weiss, the ancient groundskeeper, fixing leaky pipes and replacing blown fuses. Weiss rarely spoke, but when he did, it was with that same unplaceable accent as Thorne and Faust. We were repairing a burst pipe in one of the first-floor bathrooms when Weiss was called away to deal with an issue in the boiler room. He told me to wait, but as soon as he was gone, I began exploring. The bathroom was adjacent to one of the locked areas, and I'd noticed a ventilation grate near the floor that might connect them. The grate came away easily, the screws loose with age. Behind it was a narrow duct, just large enough for a skinny 13-year-old to squeeze through. I didn't hesitate. This might be my only chance to see what they were hiding. The duct led to another grate, this one overlooking what appeared to be a laboratory. Glass cabinets lined the walls, filled with specimens floating in cloudy fluid, organs, tissue samples, things I couldn't identify. Metal tables gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights. One held what looked like medical equipment, scalpels, forceps, things with blades and teeth whose purpose I could only guess at. Another held a body. I couldn't see the face from my angle, just the bare feet, one with a small butterfly tattoo on the ankle. I recognized that tattoo. Emmett Dawson had gotten it in honor of his little sister, who died of leukemia. The door to the laboratory opened, and Dr. Faust entered, followed by Headmaster Thorne and another man I didn't recognize, tall, blonde, with the same hollow eyes as the rest of the staff. They were speaking that language again, the one I couldn't identify. Faust gestured to the body, pointing out something I couldn't see. The blonde man nodded, made a note on a clipboard. Thorne said something that made the others laugh, a sound like ice cracking. Then they were moving toward the body, Faust reaching for one of the gleaming instruments. I backed away from the grate so quickly I nearly gave myself away, banging my elbow against the metal duct. I froze, heart pounding, certain they'd heard, but no alarm was raised. I squirmed backward until I reached the bathroom, replaced the grate with shaking hands, and was sitting innocently on a supply bucket when Weiss returned. That night, I lay awake long after lights out, listening to Wyatt's wet, snuffling breaths from the next bed. I knew I had to escape, not just for my sake, but to tell someone what was happening. The problem was evidence. No one would believe a delinquent teenager without proof. The next day, I stole a camera from the photography club. It was an old Kodak, nothing fancy, but it had half a roll of film left. I needed to get back to that laboratory to document what I'd seen. I also needed my journal, names, dates, everything I'd recorded. Together, they might be enough to convince someone to investigate. My opportunity came during the Christmas break. Most of the boys went home for the holidays, but about a dozen of us had nowhere to go. Parents who didn't want us, or in my case, parents who'd been told it was therapeutically inadvisable to interrupt my rehabilitation process. The reduced population meant fewer staff on duty, less supervision. The night of December 23rd, I waited until the midnight bed check was complete. Wyatt was gone. He'd been taken for one of those therapy sessions that afternoon and hadn't returned. I had the room to myself. I retrieved my journal from its hiding place, tucked the camera into my waistband, and slipped into the dark hallway. The building was quiet except for the omnipresent creaking of old wood and the hiss of the radiators. I made my way down the service stairs at the far end of the east wing, avoiding the main staircase where a night supervisor was usually stationed. My plan was to enter the laboratory through the same ventilation duct, take my photographs, and be back in bed before the 3 a.m. bed check. I never made it that far. As I reached the first floor landing, I heard voices, Thorn and Faust, speaking English this time, their words echoing up the stairwell from below. "The latest batch is promising," Faust was saying. "Particularly the Mitchell boy. His resistance to the initial treatments is most unusual." "You're certain?" Thorn's voice skeptical. "The blood work confirms it. He has the markers we've been looking for. With the proper conditioning, he could be most useful." "And the others?" A dismissive sound from Faust. "Failed subjects. We'll process them tomorrow." The Hargrove boy yielded some interesting tissue samples, but nothing remarkable. The Reed boy's brain showed potential, but degraded too quickly after extraction. I must have made a sound, a gasp, a sob, something, because the conversation stopped abruptly. Then came the sound of dress shoes on the stairs below me coming up. Click-clack, click-clack. I ran. Not back to my room. They'd looked there first, but toward the administrative offices. Emmett had once mentioned that one of the windows in the file room had a broken lock. If I could get out that way, make it to the fence where the snow had drifted high enough to reach the top, maybe I had a chance. I was halfway down the hall when I heard it, a high, keening sound, like a hunting horn but wrong somehow, discordant. It echoed through the building, and in its wake came other sounds, doors opening, footsteps from multiple directions, voices calling in that strange language. The hunt was on. I reached the file room, fumbled in the dark for the window. The lock was indeed broken, but the window was painted shut. I could hear them getting closer, the click-clack of dress shoes, the heavier tread of the supervisor's boots. I grabbed a metal paperweight from the desk and smashed it against the window. The glass shattered outward, cold air rushing in. As I was climbing through, something caught my ankle, a hand, impossibly cold, its grip like iron. I kicked back wildly, connected with something solid. The grip loosened just enough for me to pull free, tumbling into the snow outside. The ground was 3 feet below, the snow deep enough to cushion my fall. I floundered through it toward the fence, the frigid air burning my lungs. Behind me, the broken window filled with figures, Thorn, Faust, others, their faces pale blurs in the moonlight. That horn sound came again, and this time it was answered by something in the woods beyond the fence. A howl that was not a wolf, not anything I could identify. The sound chilled me more than the winter night. I reached the fence where the snow had drifted against it, forming a ramp nearly to the top. The razor wire gleamed above, waiting to tear me apart. I had no choice. I threw my journal over first, then the camera, and began to climb. What happened next remains fragmented in my memory. I remember the bite of the wire, the warm wetness of blood freezing on my skin. I remember falling on the other side, the impact driving the air from my lungs. I remember running through the woods, the snow reaching my knees, branches whipping at my face. And I remember the pursuit, Not just behind me, but on all sides, moving between the trees with impossible speed. The light of flashlights bobbing in the darkness. That same horn call, closer now. The answering howls, also closer. I found a road eventually, a rural highway, deserted in the middle of the night 2 days before Christmas. I followed it, stumbling, my clothes torn and crusted with frozen blood. I don't know how long I walked. Hours, maybe. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when headlights appeared behind me. I should have hidden. It could have been them, searching for their escaped subject. But I was too cold, too exhausted. I stood in the middle of the road and waited, ready to surrender, to die, anything to end the desperate flight. It was a state police cruiser. The officer, a burly man named Kowalski, was stunned to find a half-frozen teenager on a remote highway at dawn. I told him everything, showed him my journal, the camera. He didn't believe me, not really, but he took me to the hospital in the nearest town. I had hypothermia, dozens of lacerations from the razor wire, 2 broken fingers from my fall. While I was being treated, Officer Kowalski called my parents. He also, thankfully, called his superior officers about my allegations. What happened next was a blur of questioning, disbelief, and finally, a reluctant investigation. By the time the police reached Blackwood, much had changed. The laboratory I discovered was a storage room, filled with old desks and textbooks. Many records were missing or obviously altered. Several staff members, including Thorne and Faust, were nowhere to be found. But they did find evidence, enough to raise serious concerns. Blood on the basement floor that didn't match any known staff or student. Personal effects of missing boys hidden in a locked cabinet in Thorne's office. Financial irregularities suggesting payments far beyond tuition. And most damning, a hidden room behind the boiler, containing medical equipment and what forensics would later confirm were human remains. The school was shut down immediately. The remaining boys were sent home or to other facilities. A full investigation was launched, but it never reached a satisfying conclusion. The official report cited severe institutional negligence and evidence of criminal misconduct by certain staff members. There were no arrests. The key figures had vanished. My parents were horrified, of course, not just by what had happened to me, but by their role in sending me there. Our relationship was strained for years afterward. I had nightmares, behavioral problems, trust issues. I spent my teens in and out of therapy. The official diagnosis was PTSD, but the medications they prescribed never touched the real problem. The knowledge of what I'd seen, what had nearly happened to me. The story made the papers briefly, then faded away. Reform schools were already becoming obsolete, and Blackwood was written off as an extreme example of why such institutions needed to be replaced. The building itself burned down in 1977, an act of arson never solved. I tried to move on. I finished high school, went to community college, eventually became an accountant. I married Elaine in 1983, had 2 daughters who never knew the full story of their father's time at Blackwood. I built a normal life, or a reasonable facsimile of one. But I never stopped looking over my shoulder. Never stopped checking the locks 3 times before bed. Never stopped flinching at the sound of dress shoes on hardwood. Because sometimes, on the edge of sleep, I still hear that horn call. And sometimes, when I travel for work, I catch glimpses of familiar faces in unfamiliar places. A man with deep-set eyes at a gas station in Ohio. A small man with wire-rimmed glasses at an airport in Florida. They're older, just as I am, but still recognizable. Still watching. Last year, my daughter sent my grandson to a summer camp in Vermont. When I saw the brochure, with its pictures of a stately Maine building surrounded by pine forest, I felt the old panic rising. I made her withdraw him, made up a story about the camp's safety record. I couldn't tell her the truth, that one of the smiling counselors in the background of one photo had a familiar face, unchanged despite the decades. That the camp director's name was an anagram of Thorne. They're still out there, still operating, still separating the wheat from the chaff, still processing the failed subjects. And sometimes, in my darkest moments, I wonder if I truly escaped that night. If this life I've built is real, or just the most elaborate conditioning of all. A comforting illusion, while whatever remains of the real Thaddeus Mitchell floats in a specimen jar in some new laboratory, in some new Blackwood, under some new name. I don't sleep well anymore, but I keep checking the locks. I keep watching, and now I've told my story. Perhaps that will be enough. But I doubt it.